Storytelling has been a technique used for centuries. It's been used for both verbal and written communications, but we might ask the question, does it have application in communicating ideas as scientists? Well, the answer to that question is unequivocally yes. And this seminar today will discuss the role of storytelling along with other communications techniques to make your talks and discussions more compelling. Let's see how that's done. Let's look at an example of storytelling in the business world. This example, which features Steve Jobs releasing the iPhone, has several key elements that we'll discuss after the video. So let's take a look.
This is a day I've been looking forward to for 2.5 years. Every once in a while, a revolutionary product comes along that changes everything. And Apple has been, well, first of all, one's very fortunate if you get to work on just one of these in your career. Apple's been very fortunate. It's been able to introduce a few of these into the world. In 1984, we introduced the Macintosh. It didn't just change Apple, it changed the whole computer industry. In 2001, we introduced the first iPod. And it didn't just change the way we all listen to music. It changed the entire music industry. Well, today, we're introducing 3 revolutionary products of this class. The first one is a widescreen iPod with touch controls. The second is a revolutionary mobile phone. And the third is a breakthrough internet communications device. So, 3 things. A widescreen iPod with touch controls, a revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communications device. An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. An iPod, a phone. Are you getting it? These are not 3 separate devices. This is one device. And we are calling it iPhone. Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone. And here it is. No. Actually, here it is, but we're going to leave it there for now. So
let's take a look at what Mr. Jobs did correctly, which sometimes we don't do so well. First of all, he didn't talk about himself or his life. So he didn't start the presentation with, "Hi, my name's Steve Jobs." Everybody knows that. "I work at Apple." Everybody knows that as well. Usually, in a technical presentation, you have a biography that introduces your skill set as well as your experience, and even a moderator who might introduce the talk for you and give a brief sketch about you and your background. So it really isn't necessary for you to start with, "Hi, I'm Rick Parmley. This is what I do for a living," but rather get right into the story and the material. Secondly, he didn't swamp you with a lot of procedures or technical details. That's another key feature of storytelling. We don't want the story to be swamped by a bunch of non-essential material, like in his case, how much storage was on the iPhone, or how fast was the processor, or what's the download speed. All of these things aren't really necessary in creating a compelling story. And he didn't really dive into these details in such a way as to cause you to want to say, "Oh, I can take a rest for a moment, and I really don't need to talk or listen anymore to what he has to say for a while." Rather, why was it so effective? It was effective because he painted a picture of the history of how we got to the iPhone. There were 3 challenges presented. There was an internet communicator challenge. There was a communications challenge with regard to music. And then there was also the need for a good, fully functional cell phone. He presented those 3 problems and then provided solutions by effectively using graphics and slides to paint the picture of the solution, which fit right into his story. So, is there a template for good storytelling? That's really the question. And are there good source materials, and how can we use this template to create a good story for each of our technical presentations? You might question this initially and might say, well, the particular programs that I'm a part of or the meetings that I'm asked to present at, they aren't really necessary to present anything but introduction, background, experimental, results, and conclusions. Blah. That's exactly what you're going to get, is a very low quality presentation when we can ramp up the presentation and the effectiveness of our presentation by using storytelling. So let's take a look at the template first of all. Number 1, a template should make your story describing the setting first, what you observed. Number 2, describe who is in the story, the characters. So, for example, our research group has been working on blah, blah, blah. My research group consists of these 3 principal investigators, and each of them has created a role within the final result that I'm presenting today. What was said by those characters? Number 3, how did the conversation go? Was it a disagreement? Was it a discussion? Did everybody contribute as a team? Describe what exactly was said during those conversations. Number 4, was there a drama involved in this story? Did, in fact, you have crises along the way that you had to solve, problems that caused the research to be at least temporarily interrupted? That will contribute to the effectiveness of the drama of the story. Live the emotion. How did you feel at the time of these crises? How did you feel when the actual result finally came to fruition? Did it make you feel good, euphoric, delighted, or relieved? What are some of those emotions that go with that? But remember, the bottom line is not the story. The story is just the framework associated with what we're trying to convey. The results are still the most important part. The story just frames it so everyone in the audience can understand it. Let's take a look at some storytelling tips. One comes from this gentleman. You might recognize him. Albert Einstein said, "Everything should be made as simple as possible, but not one bit simpler." That's the key to storytelling. If we can make it simple enough that the mind of anyone in the audience can grasp and understand and see the connection between your results, what you're trying to communicate, and the story, then you become an effective storyteller. One caution though, television is not real life, according to Bill Gates. And the reason for that is not everyone watches the same mixture of television programming. Thus, you might have a great story about Friends. Some of you don't even remember Friends. And yet that might have virtually no application in my mind to connect with the result I'm trying to achieve. So be careful about using modern drama and television and other media if in fact it isn't universally known. Source material. So where can you find good source material for storytelling? Your experiences are just as good as stories as any. What happened on your way to Pittsburgh conference today? Did you see certain activities on the streets, or were you out on Bourbon Street last night? Or where exactly are you having those experiences, and did they have impact on your life in some small way? Number two, nature. And I put bumblebees up there, but the question is, what does bumblebees have to do with any kind of storytelling? Let me give you an example. Let's say that you're a scientist 25 or 30 years ago and you're studying why bumblebees fly. Many aerodynamic engineers many years ago said bumblebees should not have the capability because of their body size and the smallness of their wingspan to be able to fly, but they do fly. How would you apply that story? Well, in our research, we were given an insurmountable problem. In fact, many other scientists said, we can't possibly succeed. But as the bumblebee does fly, our research flies. We're able to accomplish a lot with a very small amount of resource. And thus, that story helps to link in people's minds what exactly your research is all about. How about real life experiences or news experiences? Have you heard of Sully Sullenberger? Many of you might be thinking, oh, that's the Miracle on the Hudson pilot. Yeah, when U.S. Air Flight 1549 took off and hit two geese in flight, and both engines on a two-engine aircraft were disabled, that was a crisis situation. Well, Sullenberger effectively landed the aircraft. Why? Not only was he a seasoned, disciplined pilot, but he depended on such things as aircraft checklists. So he pulled out his checklist, he flipped to ditching an aircraft over water, and effectively landed. How could we apply that story in our research? Well, we use checklists in a way. We communicate to new researchers particularly that this is the way we do it here in the laboratory, or this is an equipment that we use. That checklist concept would be a very good way to frame conversations and communications with researchers within our group. Or how about history, movies, books, parables, pictures, videos? All of these source materials can be used if they have broad application to the audience that we're discussing our issue or our research with. We can use picture illustrations. I'll give you an example. So what's the story here? Some of you might say, well, that's an eagle, but look closely at his claws. What's the eagle doing? Well, he's hunting. Well, why is that important? Well, in our research, we might be hunting for more dollars, might be hunting for ideas, maybe hunting for results. So that might be a good illustration. What happened here? Well, in this case, the eagle was hunting, but he missed. Now, what happens when we miss? Do we have failure? Yes, we do. Does Mr. Eagle go back to his nest, put his head down and say, sorry family, I didn't get anything today. We'll just have to wait to eat till tomorrow? No. He circles his way on up to 1,000 feet or whatever his hunting distance is, and he keeps hunting until he's successful. Isn't that the same way with our research groups? Our research group is like an eagle hunting for results. And in fact, when we have failure, which we can see here in the case of the eagle, we don't give up. A good story. Well, general ideas like business problems, how did we solve it? Or technical problems, how did we solve them? Or we made this observation and we got to the solution. We can use those ways to frame how our story is constructed. We can research a news item, for example, and use that as an effective way to paint a picture of what we're doing in our research and results. In all cases, use the template. In all the modules in this communications course, and storytelling is no exception, we hand out scenarios to the class members so they have the opportunity to put into practice what they've learned in that particular module. In storytelling, for example, scenarios are provided so that team members can collaborate, and then one member of the team, we call them the team leader, will present the results or the story that they've come up with to convince the audience of a particular course of action. I think you're going to enjoy that aspect of the course. The last portion of the course is just to review some of your presentations and then touch on a few key concepts that we've learned along the way. What effect did some of these stories have on you? They will have the same effect as they do on your audiences. Number two, what good things did you hear? I particularly like framing technical details with a story that is totally non-technical and it's convincing. And number three, what things could you refine if you had more time is the aspect that even within your groups, if we had a day to do this, or as Steve Jobs did in setting up his particular 3-minute presentation, he worked on storyboarding the story for literally weeks before finalizing what he needed to accomplish in telling that particular story that he told. Then, were there roadblocks that you experienced along the way? All of us have mind roadblocks that we need to overcome in order to be good, effective storytellers. To do that, we have to think deeply about what we're trying to accomplish, again, the bottom line, the results, and then work effectively around that. So let's review some of the concepts we've talked about. The template, what's the setting? Number two, who was there? Who are the characters and who do I want to talk about? What conversation? What was said? How did your research evolve along the way to become the final product? What's the drama? You ran into a roadblock associated with this aspect in your research, and how did you get around it? That's all part of the story. What emotion did it make in the team? What emotion did it create in you as a principal investigator or a worker? What point are you actually trying to convey is the bottom line. Don't let the story overwhelm the fine results that you've created. So, in summary, leaders read their stories? No. As you've seen from world leaders in government all the way to principal investigators within small research groups at small colleges and universities, avoid reading what you know well. Use a story to frame it and then stick within that framework. Storytelling can be a very effective paradigm for developing a strategy of communications. And finally, storytelling has assisted all kinds of communications and training for literally thousands of years. It will be effective for you too.